unprecedented in all of history, and I want to just explain that how it works. There's a supply-demand situation. The way the debt cycle works is, think of credit and our credit system as being like a circulatory system. That credit brings buying power, brings nutrients to all of the system. But that credit that we buy things with, we buy financial assets, we buy goods and services with, creates debt. And that debt accumulates like plaque in a system that begins to have a problem because it starts to squeeze out spending. For example, the US budget, about $1 trillion a year now goes to pay interest rates.
Ray Dalio, speaking in Dubai this February at the World Government Summit, warned that all this debt could lead to a huge economic crisis, a real heart attack for the global economy. He's seen these kinds of debt levels before, and he knows how dangerous they can be. He's urging immediate action to avoid real trouble for everyone. Don't forget to subscribe before we dive in, because we're going to break down exactly what Dalio said and what it means for you. The growing debt crisis. The global debt crisis is no longer a distant concern. It's here, and it's massive. We're talking about trillions of dollars. This isn't just a number, it's a reflection of how our economy functions. Think about it. When debt grows unchecked, it affects everyone. It creates a ripple effect that touches businesses, governments, and individuals alike. Every year, around $1 trillion is spent just on interest. That's a staggering amount. Now imagine what happens when that debt reaches a point where it can't be managed. We're looking at over $9 trillion needing to be repaid in the coming year alone. How does that not keep you up at night? This situation creates a serious supply and demand issue. When the demand for debt decreases, interest rates start to rise. This isn't just a financial problem, it's a societal one. The implications are huge. If people begin to lose faith in their ability to repay debt, confidence in the economy crumbles. What does that mean for your job, your savings, the stability of your community? Too much debt is like clogged arteries in the economy, restricting spending and potentially leading to a financial collapse.
Times I was surprised was because of things that happened that didn't happen in my lifetime before. So I needed to go back and study history. And in studying that history, that helped me a lot. And there are 5 major forces that operate in a big cycle.
History often repeats itself, and understanding these cycles is key, especially the massive debt we're facing right now. Other big forces like political clashes, global power struggles, nature, and tech also play a role, making things even more complicated. The 5 major forces at play. Let's break down these forces a bit more. The first is the financial force, which is all about debt. We're in a precarious situation where debt levels are unsustainable. What happens when people can't pay their debts? The ripple effects are devastating. Next, the internal order and disorder force. This one is fascinating and frightening. The polarization in politics creates chaos. It's not just about left versus right. It's about how we coexist as a society. Can we find common ground in such a divided environment? Then there's the great power conflict. The world is shifting and power dynamics are changing. How does this impact global alliances and trade agreements? The stakes are high and the consequences are unpredictable. Acts of nature can't be ignored either. They can wipe out entire economies overnight. Our reliance on technology is a double-edged sword. While it drives progress, it can also lead to greater disparities if not managed well. Are we prepared for the challenges that lie ahead? Current economic conditions. The current economic conditions are alarming. Point in history. The decisions we make today will resonate for years to come. The debt crisis is looming large, and if it's not addressed, the fallout will be severe. Many people think these issues are distant threats, but they're not. They're imminent. The next few years are crucial. If we fail to make necessary adjustments, we could find ourselves in a crisis that spirals out of control. Can we afford to ignore the signs any longer? Interest rates are rising and asset prices are high. This creates an unstable environment. The central banks are caught in a tough spot. Do they let the market correct itself, or do they intervene and risk inflation? What would you choose if you were in their shoes? The supply and demand crisis. The supply and demand crisis is a direct consequence of the debt situation. When debt holders start to panic, they sell off their assets. This creates a surplus in the market, driving prices down. It's a classic case of supply outpacing demand. As interest rates rise, borrowing becomes more expensive. This affects consumers and businesses alike. When costs rise, spending decreases. It's a downward spiral that can lead to recession. How can we reverse this trend before it becomes a full-blown crisis? We need to have a serious conversation about how we manage our debt. The time for action is now. The longer we wait, the worse it will get. Are we prepared to make the hard choices necessary to secure our financial future? The role of central banks. Central banks play a crucial role in managing national economies. They have the power to influence interest rates and control the money supply. But in a world burdened with debt, their decisions become even more critical. With rising interest rates, the cost of borrowing increases. This can lead to a slowdown in economic growth. Can central banks navigate this delicate balance without causing a recession? When debt levels are high, central banks face a dilemma. They can either allow interest rates to rise, which could stifle economic activity, or they can inject more money into the system. This could lead to inflation. Each decision carries weighty consequences, so what happens when central banks are caught between a rock and a hard place? Their actions can create ripple effects that touch every part of the economy. If they print too much money, the value of that money may decline. This diminishes purchasing power. If they raise rates too quickly, businesses and consumers may struggle to repay their debts. How do we find a path forward that avoids these pitfalls? The urgency of fiscal responsibility. Fiscal responsibility has never been more urgent. With massive debts looming, the need for sound financial management is critical. Governments must take a hard look at their spending habits. If they don't, we could face dire consequences. How can we expect to thrive if our financial systems are built on shaky foundations? Cutting spending isn't just a choice, it's a necessity. Politicians may resist making tough decisions, but the longer we wait, the more severe the repercussions could be. Imagine a future where debt spirals out of control. What will that mean for future generations? It's about prioritizing what truly matters. We need to support essential services while trimming excess fat. This requires courage and vision. Are we ready to make those sacrifices for the greater good? Strategies for reducing the debt. Reducing debt isn't easy, but it's possible. It starts with a clear strategy. Governments must identify wasteful spending and cut it out. This isn't just about slashing budgets. It's about making smart choices. We need to invest in areas that generate growth while eliminating programs that don't deliver results. Tax reform is another key piece of the puzzle. By closing loopholes and ensuring everyone pays their fair share, we can increase revenue without burdening the middle class. But will there be the political will to make these changes? Moreover, fostering economic growth is essential. When the economy grows, debt becomes more manageable. It's a delicate balance. Can policymakers create an environment that encourages innovation and investment while keeping spending in check? Political ramifications of debt cuts. Making cuts to address debt is fraught with political risks. People expect certain services from their government. When those services are threatened, the backlash can be severe. We've seen this play out in various countries. Cuts can lead to unrest and social upheaval. Are we prepared to handle the fallout? Political leaders must communicate the necessity of these measures. Transparency is key. If the public understands why cuts are needed, they may be more willing to accept them. But trust is hard to build, especially in turbulent times. How do we bridge that gap? Ultimately, the goal should be to create a sustainable future. We need to stabilize our finances without sacrificing social stability. It's a tightrope walk. Can we find a way to balance fiscal responsibility with the needs of our citizens? The balance of risk and reward. Every financial decision involves risk. When it comes to debt reduction, the stakes are high. Cutting too deeply can harm economic growth, yet failing to act can lead to a crisis. It's a classic case of weighing risk against reward. How do we strike that balance? Investors are watching closely. Their confidence hinges on how governments manage their finances. If they sense instability, they may pull back. This can exacerbate the very problems we're trying to solve. What steps can we take to reassure investors while implementing necessary changes? Finding that sweet spot is crucial. It requires careful planning and execution. Can we take bold actions without tipping the scales too far? The future of global debt. The future of global debt hangs in the balance. With so many nations facing similar challenges, the need for coordinated action is clear. We're all interconnected in this economic web. What happens in one country can have repercussions worldwide. Are we ready to collaborate for a common solution? The next few years will be defining. Countries must take proactive steps to manage their debts responsibly. The alternative is unthinkable. As we navigate this complex landscape, let's remember that our actions today shape the world of tomorrow. Will we rise to the occasion? Ultimately, the path forward requires courage and vision. We must embrace fiscal responsibility while fostering growth. It's a challenging balance, but it's essential for a stable future. How will we tell our story in the years to come? If you're concerned about your financial security and are thinking about investing, check out the first link in the description. It's the platform I use, Interactive Brokers. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more great content.